Hello and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name is John Wright. I'm part of the team here at the Church Office, and I'm also the operations manager at Frinton Free Church. It's a joy today to welcome you to our Admin and Ops podcast, and we love to talk about the work of ministry behind the scenes, whether it's structure, people, processes. We do love it all, and we seek to serve the churches by helping to think through some of these issues. So if you haven't already, do check out some of our other episodes and topics on your favourite streaming platform and on YouTube. Now, it's especially a great pleasure and joy to have our guest, Adrian Semarini, lead pastor of Gamlingay Baptist Church, who joins us today. Thank you for joining us today, Adrian.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here. I'm excited to talk all things church ops, which is always fun.
It's a great pleasure. So Adrian, we've connected a couple of times at a few events, and Fresh Streams conference. I've been particularly inspired by the work you do around digital churches, developing techniques of having large church online presences, even if that's maybe from a smaller rural physical presence, and doing that without masses of operational resources. I know you've got lots of wisdom on this topic and some tips and techniques for us to try in our context.
Well, it's very generous to say there's wisdom. There's some random thoughts. Whether or not it's wisdom, we'll find out. See if see what we can take. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's always been great to kind of connect with you in different spaces and places. And I've always been a bit of a techie guy, so I think in one sense, there's always been some stuff in me that kind of has bubbled up, and I've always enjoyed tech. But my context is not a very techie one. I mean, it's become, but so Gamlingay Baptist Church, I've been here. It'll be 10 years in October. And when we first arrived, tech was not really used. There was, and I say this really kindly, a broken projector screen that was literally tied to the banister, so it was very crooked. And we had a projector that didn't even have an HD input. I remember we tried to do a film night one night and played a DVD off of my laptop, and it would not play because the DVD was HD and it just could not process the information of the visual. But we've been on a heck of a journey, and so fast forward to where we are now. We live stream all of our services. We're still very much probably considered what's considered a medium church. So we have in terms of attendance on average 70 to 80 people on a Sunday. If everybody was here, we'd have upwards of maybe 115, 120. But membership in terms of the Baptist Church ecclesiology, we are 54. So we're not a massive church, but we have been described quite kindly and graciously, I think, as punching above our weight in some respect, and which is perhaps some of what we'll talk about a little bit today.
That's so exciting. That's really helpful to get that context on that as well. And one of the things as well, I know we sort of talked about before we hopped on, was actually a Church Suite, and they've very kindly sponsored this podcast. So a big shout out to Gavin and the team at Church Suite for sponsoring this. Their platform, as I'm sure you know, supports thousands of churches across the UK as well as the wider church across the world. At the Free, we've kind of increasingly been using Church Suite, and it's been a game changer in the way that we've organised, communicate with members, the way we organise our rotas, supporting our kids and small group ministries. There's a lot to love, and I know it's something that you guys have really embraced as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Church Street for us. So again, the context of we don't have a staff team. I am the only paid member of staff, quote unquote, within that of Gamlingay Baptist Church. We have a great team of volunteers, and we have seen growth. But when I first arrived, we literally had a Word document, which was our contact sheet, and we started seeing growth. And rotas were done on. It should have been Excel, but it was really in Word that it was being done. It was all over the place, and very kind of almost as soon as we could, and knowing there was a cost, jumped onto Church Suite for the address book, to, if nothing else, to kind of start with. And then little by little, we've kind of grown into it. So we started using the calendar, and allowing the fact that we could embed the calendar features into our website was a massive game changer as well. You can do not just the calendar, but the kind of special events. So you have a visual on your website already done. It was a edit one place and it's done in multiple places kind of situation for us. So yeah, we've grown up into it, and realistically, we use every aspect pretty much, except for that we don't use the finance module, even though we have it. We kind of got so many modules that you now get. It was get the whole package for the same price kind of thing. We don't use the finance one yet. I'm sure there will be a day when we do, but we're not there yet. And the attendance one isn't a huge thing. We don't track kind of attendance. We're starting to look at what that looks like to track attendance, but our rotas are all done on there. The rota reminders is a game changer for us. The fact that, you know, we said it every week, someone's getting, we don't do the text messages. Again, we don't pay for that extra feature, but everyone's getting an email reminder. So if people go, oh, I didn't know, we go, yes, yes, you did. And we can see that you opened it as well. So, you know, the calendar, we use all our small groups on there. So we have 7 different small groups that you can sign up via Church Suite. You know, being a small church that also has an app that people can jump into is massive. You know, the idea of having an app years ago for a church our size would have been impossible. You'd have to pay thousands and thousands. We don't. It's there. And again, being a one-man band in one sense, again, we've grown the team. We have volunteer administrators and that kind of stuff. But starting off, you know, things like GDPR were massive, and so going actually, I don't need to control your data because you control your data, is really, really, really big and encouraging. And if somebody moves on or decides they don't want to be on the mailing list anymore, unsubscribe, done. They come off and you're sorted. So yeah, we're a big fan of Church Suite. It does have a price tag, and I know that for some people that becomes a bit difficult, but I genuinely feel that it's a price worth paying. Especially in context, you know, when, I mean, in all contexts, if you have a big church staff team, you know, the administrators can use it, but in contexts like ours, where we don't have the team, it actually just consolidates it all into one place. And the help behind it is, I know this is sponsored by Church Suite. They're not paying me to say any of this, I should probably say. um, but they are the help that we have received. Like whenever I have had a question of like, actually, I don't know how to do this, how to do that. If they're not already on there via chat, within an hour, usually I have a response via my email of like, hey, this is what you need to do. Which has been amazing. So yeah, very much rate Church Suite, and it has been part of our journey here at GVC as well, for sure.
I think you hit on some really important points there, and certainly talking around to other churches that use Church Suite, actually, the model that they use allows churches of many different sizes to use it in a way that suits and benefits them. There's scalability there, and also just their help and support is great. We actually had recently a member of the team come out to do some training with some of our volunteers and some of our staff
Amazing.
team, and yeah, it was brilliant. It was very good.
And we jumped, so Fresh Streams. So Fresh Streams is another context. I sit on the leadership team there, and it's a national movement of leaders, mainly Baptist in flavor, but kind of all are welcome. We run a national conference and a whole bunch of other events throughout the year, and we were, again, prior to that, the administrator for the conference and for Fresh Streams was actually using Mailchimp. And there was a few of us who were using Church Suite in our churches, kind of going, we really need to be using Church Suite. And so we migrated a couple years ago. And so all of our national conference booking is done through Church Suite. You know, the ticketing, everything is done through that. It genuinely has changed. Again, our database is there, our calendar is there. We use it all for that. It's a fantastic, fantastic suite. It really, really is. It's big, and it has a lot of moving parts. So there's a lot of, you know, you have to kind of get used to it and dive into it. But once you spend some time, whether it be by yourself or with a team, and get the support you need with it, they've got some great videos that kind of walk you through how to do stuff. It's one of those well worth the investment softwares, and it really helps in church comms, full stop.
I love that. That's great. So just to get you very kindly sort of introduced yourself briefly, but Adrian, who are you? What do you do? How did you get into ministry? Where have you been? Where have you come from?
Yeah, so I'm a weird one. So yeah, name's Adrian, as has been said. I am, as much as the accent may deceive everyone and make you think that I'm from, you know, North America somewhere. I often play the game. People go to the States and I go no, and then they go Canada and I go no, and then they look at me shocked. I'm actually from Cambridge, England, so I was born here. On paper, I'm British. If I don't speak and I gave you my papers, you would be like, oh, you're a Brit. But I left when I was really young, so my family moved from England to Venezuela. Then we went to Boston. We went back to Venezuela. Came back here to England for a short period. By the age of 8, I moved down to Ecuador. Lived in Ecuador in several different cities, and then at the age of 14, moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and was there until just shy of 22. And I've been back here ever since the last 18 years. So I'm a bit of a mutt, culturally mixed. blood-wise mix as well. I'm English, Irish, Spanish, Lebanese, and a bit of French in there for good measure as well. So I'm a bit of a mutt, but I love it. Have had kind of grown up with experiences all over, not because of missionary parents or anything like that. It was always just either family or business. Not military either. So again, one of those anomalies. Been a pastor at Gamlingay for 10 years. Started off prior to that at Comberton Baptist Church as a youth pastor. Journey into ministry was one where I think, like most, when God called, I was like, nope, not me, not at all. I actually started the process. My wife and I were attending an Anglican church in Cambridge. I was helping out with the youth and started kind of leading some of the evening services, and a few people kind of started speaking, as everyone has their people in the story. They were speaking ministry over me, and I went, no, 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 you're wrong, you're wrong. But decided I should, to quiet the voices and tell them, hey, I've done the due diligence. I sat down with the associate vicar at the time at the church, and he said, yeah, we have a process. Why don't we explore and see? So I did. I sat down with him. He saw ministry, so he pushed me to the next process. Sat with vocational advisors from the Church of England, so on and so forth. Literally got to the point where all I had to do was go sit before the bishop, and it was all positive. Even though I kept on saying the entire way through, I'm not going to be wearing robes. I'm not a robes guy. That isn't me. Can't do it. But then, as I was about to kind of step into that last kind of interview meeting, got a phone call from a relatively close friend at the time, even closer now. He was a former elder at Comberton Baptist Church, and they said, "Hey, listen, they're looking for a youth worker. I think you should consider it." I laughed, and there's a whole reason for that. It wasn't. My wife and I had been there for a while, but no longer, shall we put it that way? And but then prayed about it and felt God say, yeah, you need to go. And I was like, well, God, then why put me through this entire Anglican process? What is that all about? And just really firmly heard God say, you did not believe you were called into ministry. You've now gone through a process where loads of people have affirmed you, but I don't want you to serve there. I want you to serve here. And I went, okay. So that started my journey there. I then went to go study at London School of Theology. Shout out to LST, phenomenal institution. Others exist as well, but none like LST. Anyway, I'm biased, I know, but yeah, studied there part time. So I did 4 years part time, final year full time when I did my dissertation. And kind of journey through that. Started studying with a brand newborn. So I've got 3 kids, very blessed to have 3, but have journeyed the entirety of kind of ministry and education, balancing being a husband and a parent and all sorts. But praise the Lord, they're now 13, 10, and 7. So now venturing into things like GCSEs next year and all sorts of other stuff. And I'm a football dad, apparently. 2 of my kids play football and cricket. So I'm oftentimes ferrying people back and forth and standing on the side of a pitch in some way, shape, or form, cheering somebody on. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Big nutshell, sorry, but there you go.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And um, there's so many things I think we could talk about, Adrian. You've got so many strings to your bow, but I really liked what you were when we were sort of talking about what we might talk about beforehand, like this idea of digital church,
Yeah.
and some of the work that you do with Fresh Streams around that, some of the work you do within your own church context as well.
Yeah.
So what does that term mean to you? What does that look like? How would you describe digital church?
That's a great question. I think digital church will be seen and described by different people in different ways. And I think if you were to Google it, for example, there's some big churches in the States that have turned digital church to literally you attend a digital service as an avatar. You create your own little mini you, and some churches have gone as far as to go, your mini you can look like, an angel or an alien or whatever, which is, there's some theological questions perhaps we could have around that one. But for me, digital church, it's so what I do with Fresh Streams, we run different huddles throughout the year, and the one that I lead on is kind of helping people build a confident digital church, and that realistically means going from wherever you are as a church digitally to your next step. And digitally connecting, whether that be through social media, whether that be through your comms, whether that be through, hey, you have a projector screen, and it might be broken, but you're not using it. So how can you use that? What software are you going to do to put some images onto a screen to help communicate the good news of Jesus in more ways than what you're doing now? And I think that's really key. I think, we are a small church, and again, so often we've been kind of, even now, we still live stream our services, and we get live viewers of maybe 2, 3 people, and you're like, wow, there was 3 watching live. And then post services, you might get 30, 40. And if it was a really cracker of a sermon, you might get 70, 80. You're like, wow, they watched. And I've been asked many times by many of my colleagues and friends, why are we still live streaming? Why are we still putting it up? And for us, for me in particular, I think that the culture and ethos that we've kind of grown across our church, and what I encourage when I do the Fresh Stream stuff is, it's a missional outreach. It's about the one. When Jesus gives the Great Commission, he says, "Go to the ends of the earth and baptize people." And the ends of the earth in today's day and age is literally through this thing. Like, I'm connecting with people. I mean, right now we will have people listening and watching that I've never encountered with, I've never connected with, but digitally we are speaking, hopefully holding their attention. Right. And so when I see and I read that scripture and I go, okay, well, what does the ends of the earth look like? I go, okay, how does that work? And for us, it's if one person watches something, hears something, connects differently, if one person is able to take, whether it be a small step or a giant step towards Jesus, then it's worth it. And we have to measure up the cost to some of that. You don't want to go, I'm going to spend all my time 24/7 in building a 1 minute reel that may reach one person, when I could. It's managing that. But I think there are ways of setting yourself up well to the point where actually once the setup is done, you can then create, um, the main thing. Perhaps let's call it your Sunday morning, which maybe for a lot of people the main thing is the main thing on the Sunday, the worship and this and the other. Okay, well, how can you then use that and then further connect online? How are you using your website? We have been very blessed. I often say, I don't wish lockdown on anybody. Lockdown was horrible. COVID was horrible, but that season of lockdown, God accelerated what he was doing in us and through us. So we walked into lockdown, a church attendance of, if we had 25 people on a Sunday, we were like, come on, there's 25. We walked out, and when we were actually able to connect and gather and open the church building properly, there was 50 new people in the room. And we as a team, there was like 4 or 5 of us doing everything. We were like, what do we do? How do we pastor a church of 50? How, what do we do? And hilariously, every person thought they were the only new person in the building, right? So they're like, "Hi, this is my first time," and they're like, "It's your first time? It's also my first time." And it was almost like a comedy sketch. But the reason was they had been watching online, they had connected online, and even still to this day, praise the Lord, we're seeing new faces join us on a regular basis. And oftentimes I walk up to them and I'm like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" They're like, "Adrian, how are you?" I was like, I've forgotten your name. Have we met before?" And they're like, "No, no. I've just been watching for the last few weeks online." And so they have connected with us, and they have kind of, done the whole shopping, testing before you buy, before you go shopping, you want to try it out, try before you buy. They've been doing that online. And I would never have known that, but people are connecting in ways like that. So recognizing that the digital space that we perhaps don't want to inhabit but have to, our websites, our social media presence, our live streams, all those things have an impact on people, and they're connecting whether we like it or not. And so if they're going to us, statistically, when people are looking for the church, the first thing they do is Google churches near me. And if they land on your website and you don't have a website, or, when I arrived here, they had I think it was a BT community website. So it was like bt.com/community/ a huge long name /gambling. No one's ever going to click on, like, they didn't even have a domain name. So being able to go, okay, what does it look like? What is our website sometimes are super, super big and clunky. They don't have to have, our kitchen sides, Pro Church Tools, Brady Shearer out of Canada runs Pro Church Tools. I'm a big fan of his, do a lot of following up on what they teach. And one of the things that they talk about when helping people build websites is that they talk about the kind of the kitchen side, the kitchen countertop concept. You don't walk into your kitchen and have all of your tools out on the side. It's just, they're not there. You have some key things that are on the side. So the kettle's on the side, the toaster's on the side. But if you need, a spatula, you know where to find it. You know where to go. And it's the same idea that sometimes we throw our websites and everything goes on the main page, and 17,000 people go to it and go, whoa, 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 whoa. what is the main thing that we need to communicate? What is the purpose of those things? And so that's some of the stuff that we've been journeying through. And yeah, we can go into more details of some stuff if you want to, but overall, it's that digital presence of kind of going, we exist in a world where everyone's online and we want to be in person. Like I'd much rather, sit down face to face. I mean, even this, we're doing this over Zoom, which is a beautiful thing, but I would so much rather be in the same room with you. Yeah, we can mic up, but how, the physical face to face is always going to be 1,000 times better, in my opinion. But we live in a world where the digital exists. So how are we going to embrace that for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the one who doesn't yet know Jesus, so that we can build his kingdom in our places? And that's the heart behind everything we do.
That's super helpful, and you're absolutely right. Over COVID, it was the reality, wasn't it? All culture,
Yeah,
church, life was happening online for better or for worse. And actually, now that we don't have to do that post lockdown, actually, it's re-establishing what does that mean? What are the benefits? What's, theologically, where does
yeah,
that sit? Um, and that idea that you touched upon, that that people are maybe, that maybe they don't have the confidence, or they don't want to commit to going to a church in person just to try it out, but they'll sort of, they'd maybe sit and they'd watch a few services online first, or they'd check out the social media or the website, even if they're exploring Christianity as well, not just a
absolutely.
church per se. And there's some books that I've been reading through recently as part of there's a group that we've been running, and I can see perhaps skepticism around using some of these online tools, social media. Actually,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things, opportunities for them not to be used particularly helpfully, um,
absolutely.
and lots of things that, addiction amongst young people and stuff like that. But equally, there's an opportunity to shine a light on these places, and be creating content, be sharing, if you've got the
Yeah,
opportunity to, some of this exciting stuff that's going on within the churches.
absolutely. I mean, I think the reality is we know that social media and phone addictions are a big thing, and we know it's having a mental health, it's caused a bit of a mental health epidemic. Like we know that, but and maybe not a but, maybe an and it's still something that people are going to left, right, and center. And we can bury our heads in the sand and ignore it, or we can say, okay, how do I create stuff that is positive? So one of the things I love about kind of social media aspects. So again, Brady Shearer, again, I'm going to say his name probably a few times because I think for me he's been influential, and I've got to give credit where credit is due. But the Pro Church Tools team, like kind of their big ethos from day one, is helping us embrace the other 167 hours in the day that isn't just a Sunday morning service, right? And how are you connecting with people? And one of the big things that they're constantly saying is don't just use your social media to advertise your event. Like if you're just throwing up a hey, come join us, people are going to scroll right past. It's creating a window into who you are. It's creating space for you to actually be able to let people get to know you a little bit. And one of the big trends that was taken over a bit last year, and I thought was fantastic, was putting a little mic on the people that are welcoming. Every church has welcomers. Every church, whether they're young, whether they're old, whether everybody has a welcoming person like that. You have that person. Put a mic on them and throw a camera away from them and just film their interactions and cut that down. And it's like, oh, hey, welcome, blah, blah, blah. And you have these like little 1 minute moments of going, wow, your church is super friendly, super welcoming. I want to get to know who that was. It's there's no theological teaching in it. There's no come to this event. There's no anything about that. It's just this is part of who we are as a church, you know, capturing some of the right. So here's a little story. We moved away from doing in-person announcements a while ago, in churches, and one of the reasons is I don't know if this is the case in your church, John, but in our church, it would either be myself or somebody else giving announcements, and what could take 3 to 5 minutes would take like 10 to 15. We there was fumbling, there was stumbling, there was yeah, right. We just never you'd forget something and then suddenly remember. And one of the guys in our church said, "Well, why don't we film it?" I was like, "What do you mean? Why do we film it?" Yeah, well, let's film it. So we call it the GBC preview, And every week, a different person in the church. So I get, there's a team of us, but it's not just me. It's not just, there's maybe 5 or 6 of us that, including children and young people. So we have some kids and young people. We pre-write a bit of a script, and then that goes out to whoever's going to be doing it that day, so they can make it themselves. So like, I might write, hey, these are the announcement bullet points or whatever, and then people will write it in their own language. And then we film it. Now, we, again, as a church, invested in a camera. So we have a decent camera, but you can just do it on an iPhone like this if you wanted to. I've done that before. In fact, this past weekend's uh, preview was filmed on my phone because I was at a conference, and so I was like, how cool would it be to take it from the conference? So I filmed it on this, kind of a bit more gun and run kind of thing. Um, Run and gun even. Anyway, and but we invested, I think we spent like 100 quid on a teleprompter device that we got off of Amazon that sits on the tripod. The camera sits in there, and so it reflects an iPad. Free app, because we're all about the freebies where we can be. We don't have huge amounts of money. And then it's a teleprompter, so then whoever's doing it doesn't have to memorize it. They're reading it. Now, this then becomes 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes on a really long day. We have more views on that online via Facebook and YouTube than anything else. And the other day, I was walking up to the church. We live in a small community, just under 5,000 people. And one of the older members of the community, walking her dog, walked up to me and said, "Oh, Adrian, I loved seeing your kids do the preview the other day. They were just absolutely fantastic." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And I then had a moment, and I went, "She, she literally spent 5 minutes watching church announcements." Right? She didn't watch a theological moment. She didn't watch the praise and worship. She watched 2 kids deliver church announcements. That may not save her, right? It may not be like the moment where she's going to go, "Jesus, I'm yours." But it's something that gave her an insight into who we are as a church. And if she is one of the hundreds of people, which is weird, but that are watching announcements, okay, then they're connecting. And if maybe they'll watch the announcements and then come to something that we're offering. Maybe they might not come to the small group, they might not come to the fellowship meal after church, but they might come to the Easter egg hunt, or they might come to this or the other. And they're seeing different ages and different people. And then we play that in church as well. So we put it up on our social media, it goes out on the Sunday mornings, but we play it. So our Sunday mornings announcements are guaranteed 3 to 5 minutes. Check out the screen with so and so. Boom. Everybody watches. There's always bloopers because there's always somebody making mistakes. So the blooper reel runs at the end for an extra 30 seconds. And we all love it and we connect it. Something so simple and so silly that saves us time, that came out of a selfishness for us of how do we cut down the babbling at the front from Adrian, through to we are connecting digitally with people in our community, a demographic that I just doesn't make sense to connect with through that, with announcements. What? But if they watch that, what else are they watching? If they watch that, what else might they connect into that might lead them into hearing the good news, that might lead them into knowing Jesus a bit more? So it's all connected. It's really amazing.
I think that's such a brilliant example of um, just how the variety of different ways that people can find their way into church, the way they can connect into church, and also just the way that God can use stuff like that in people's lives that you don't even anticipate or realize beforehand. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's absolutely brilliant. In terms of the work you do at Fresh Streams and the stuff that you do at Gambling Gay, um, you know, say I'm a minister or a pastor at a small kind of rural church. I don't have masses of resources. What should I start thinking about? Where should I start, and what kind of would the
Yeah.
projection down the road look like if I was interested in kind of this digital church idea?
Amazing. So that's great. That's again part of the things that we kind of journey through. And if people are interested, they can head to the Fresh Streams website, freshstreams.net, and they can go into the huddles. And if you want to book on, I'd love to journey it with you. What we do with that is it's an hour a month for 10 months. So we kind of journey it for a long time. And there's also a 24-hour retreat where we get together with everybody and the other huddles as well. And we kind of celebrate and we pray and journey together. But in a nutshell, what we journey is kind of, again, we talk all aspects of the digital. So we start with simple things like email addresses. When I arrived here, there was no email, there was no domain name, there was nothing. But actually, how you present to the world, it may be a sad. We might think, oh, it's a sad place that we live in that we can't have, Adrian.Samarini@gmail be enough. Like it should be okay. I agree, perhaps. but actually there's something that when you present an email address that goes, Adrian at gbchurch.org.uk, they go, oh, you're part of something. It isn't just you rogue. You're a part of something. What is the something? Let me go to gbchurch.org.uk. So things like email, which, if I'm honest, freaks people out. But one of the beautiful things is, as organizations that are charitable, we get a lot of stuff for free. So when I first started here, we started actually paying for the email addresses, the Gmail suite, until somebody told me, and I wish I would have known it sooner. We did it for about 2 years. Somebody said to me, "Do you know that as a charity, you get the entirety of Google Suite for free?" And I was like, "Come again? What?" And they've changed it now. It's no longer G Suite. It's now Google Workspace, I think is the title, and things like that. But as a charitable organization, you get it for free. And you don't just get one email address, you get as many email addresses as you want. And you get 100 terabyte of shared storage. Now, for those of you who don't do the digital stuff, that's a lot, right? Like it's a lot of storage, more storage than most of us know what to do with. And so then I jumped on that. So I have an email address, but then as we started seeing growth and as we had kids team leaders take, and again, all voluntary, we have volunteer kids teams and volunteer youth teams and a volunteer administrator. We started creating emails. So we have office at GB Church, kids at GB Church, youth at GB Church. Now they're not used as much as mine is. My inbox is the one that is like full to the brim on a regular basis. However, it gives something that you're blessing your team with, but then also people can communicate with. So actually, if I have a youth question, I'll email youth that. If I have I've got an administrative question, I want to put something in the news sheet, great, email office at, simple things like that, which are a starting point. You then start thinking about website, there will be probably a cost of hosting a website somewhere. But there are cheaper versions out there. So Squarespace is one of the website hosts that are really, really good, and it's just drag and drop. A lot of people will go, I don't know how to design it. I don't know HTML. Neither do I. Like, welcome to join the club. But there are different ways you can do it. We were very blessed when I first arrived. A friend of mine did websites. He actually is a part of a church in Watford, and he's been doing web design for a long time. So he did us an amazing mates rates deal for our first website and got us up and running. So our current website is actually hosted on Nucleus, which is a little bit pricier than that of Squarespace. Others are available again, but Nucleus is part of that Pro Church Tools kind of family with British here. But we won that. There was a competition. They were launching their website design, and they said, we're going to give away. I think they did 1,000 website designs for free, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. And that included them sending a photographer to come photograph the church and our services for free. That included them designing the website for free. That included them, and of course now we pay a monthly to update it. But things like that, there's opportunities out there for us as small churches to be considering that. And then again, for me, it is how are you connecting and communicating with those in the church? Church Suite is for us, but there are others out there. I won't name them because they're not sponsors, but but there are options out there of how you're connecting with people. Learning style. So as a pastor, I preach. It's one of the things I'm privileged and blessed to do, and one of the gifts that God has bestowed upon, and that's amazing. But I also know that the key to a good sermon isn't just the words I use. It's also the visuals behind me. Some people that are sat before me will not hear half of what I say, but they will see everything that's on the screen. So being able to say, actually, what are you creating? I'm not a professional graphic designer, but I can create some. We use things like Canva. Canva Pro, which is the full feature, is absolutely free for charities like us. Absolutely free. And again, you can have more than one person log on. So things like that we walk through and we go, okay, what is it? And then we walk through the basics of, because there's good design and there's bad design, right? And you can overcrowd a web page or a points page for a sermon. So we have all these conversations of what to do and how to do it. And if you're listening to this or watching this kind of thing, well, I just don't design, I don't know what I'm doing. It's fine. Canva Pro has templates. So you can start with that. Now, there will be graphic designers listening to this right now going, how dare you? You're killing our art form. And I'm sorry, it is true. It is not as simple as just picking a template and going when you are a graphic designer. But when you're in a place like us, as a church like us, who has very little resource, don't have graphic designers in the family, don't have the funding for it, Canva is really special. There's always better out there. There's always going to be a skill set. And if you can afford the skill set, hire it in. but we designed our logo, and this is I'm so sorry, I'm gonna admit this, but we designed our logo in Canva. I opened up the logo thing. I was like, oh, that's a nice swirly font. I like that. I like the blue circle. Baby blue was our thing. Great. GBC it is on the baby blue. But now you see that across all of our things, people know that that's us. It's just some of the things that you get to do. We again, we I talked about lockdown being the time that kind of accelerated stuff. We didn't skip a beat. We started pre-recording services, so I used this thing, my phone, to start with, and I bought like a little cheap little clip-on mic that had a wire, and it kind of went from here, and it kind of connected, and I was always trying to hide it or whatever. One of the guys in our church is a bit of a musician, so he started recording some stuff. So we never skipped a beat, but then got to the point where we were thinking, oh man, uh, we're seeing people connect online, great, and they're connecting from all over. So we weren't expecting it to translate to people in the building for some odd reason, but we thought we got to commit to them. So we decided to invest in some gear. So we, bought some. Again, not everybody has the finance to it, but if you do, or if you can find it, sometimes people love to give towards a cause. You can invest in some cameras, and if I'm 100% honest, I'd probably now in hindsight buy a different camera than what we bought. We got a really nice camera, but you kind of go, oh, it doesn't, the autofocus isn't as great over here. And I could, there's things to consider. But we bought a camera, bought some a TV. So we changed the broken projector to TV screens and stuff like that. But then one of the things that we realized, again, being on social media, thinking, okay, I'm not going to jump onto TikTok to do dances. That's not who I am. I mean, I got rhythm, but I'm not, and I'm not looking to become an Instagram influencer or anything like that. But I do want to connect with people there. And I don't always have the capacity. So during lockdown, we did as a church, a buddy of mine and myself would every week film a 2-minute short, and we'd put it up, and it got views. And we talk a lot about virality. So we always think that if we don't have 100,000 plus views or 1 million plus views, then we're not doing our job. And I go, well, hold on a second. And again, something that Pro Church Tools talks about, and I steal the term quite happily, is we talk about going viral for you. We've had some of our shorts have 10,000 views, which for us is like massively viral. Like that's more people than there are in the village, and not everyone in the village is watching, right? So it's hey, what, and we're not chasing virality. We're just looking to connect for the one. Like every time we always pray, Lord, what we film, what we put out, would one person draw closer? So we're not doing to become influencers, but we are doing it to hopefully influence someone towards that of Jesus. Like that's the point. But coming out of lockdown, life returns back to normal. People get busy again. Jobs are open back up. We were like, well, what the heck do we do? We don't have necessarily time to film that. But if you are filming your services or live streaming your services, as a church, you have bucket loads, terabyte loads, perhaps you might say, that you put into your Google Drives. You have loads of footage that you have been recording. Actually, there are amazing tools out there to then edit that down. Now, again, if you have someone who has the time and the capacity and the capability to watch that and clip it for yourself, great, do that. Or if you want to pay for that, there are services that you can pay for someone to do that. Or there's software out there. So one of the ones that we use, and there's a free version, which gives you a watermark, or paid for version, which, have no watermark, which is called Opus Clips. And you can jump on there. Literally all you need is a YouTube link clip, or you can upload the file if you want. And it will, using AI, which again, some of us may or may not like, but there's a conversation to be had, at least I hope. It uses it and it clips your videos into 1 minute long clips or 30-second long clips. It puts the captions automatically in cool, funky ways, and it makes it prepped and ready for you to download and then upload into your software of choice. So whether your social media of choice, whether it be Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or all of the above. X, if you're using that, we stepped away from that a long time ago. I think we still have one, but it became a bit political. So, but it's just, again, and some people listening might be like, well, I'm already doing this. Okay, well, how do you go to the next step? Realistically, thinking digitally, thinking beyond where you are now digitally is where we start. And I always say, you don't want to, you can't run before you walk. So let's walk. And if you're already walking, let's move that to a jog. And if we're jogging, then let's run. And that's spoken as a person who doesn't run, and I'm not athletic in any way, shape, or form, but I know that you have to build these things up slowly. And so where you start is, where are you now? What is your capacity? when I arrived at the church, we didn't have, we now use ProPresenter for things like that. We use that kind of software, and we're pushing it to the live stream, and we're pushing it to the screens, and we have a confidence monitor for the bands, and we have all these different things, and I control it from the front. If I can one man band it. If we don't have volunteers for the day, I can do it from my iPad from the front. But where we started was using Keynote on a broken projector, right? And even introducing Keynote, where there was a visual design for people, was like, hold on a second. We can see the point. He's not just talking about, there's an image there, there's a picture, there's a short clip to watch. So you don't have to jump to the pro presenters and the live streamings immediately. You can start with, where are you now? And I know that some of my colleagues, some of the people that I've worked with on the huddles, oftentimes already have a knowledge base. So one of the guys that was on last year, actually, his entire career, he was a sound engineer and a videographer, and he kind of had all these amazing things. I was like, oh wow, you can probably teach me more than I can teach you. But incredibly, his feedback was like, actually, I hadn't even considered this, or I hadn't thought about that, or I was focusing too much on the perfect, shot, and missed the fact that actually my audio could have done this, or I could have done that. And it's just helping us think a little bit broader to go, as a church, whether it be the admin side of things through Church Suite, or the design side of things through Canva, or the live stream, the lyrics through ProPresenter and everything else. There's always something more that we can go digitally, and it's not just for the sake of doing it, right? It's for the sake of the one. And again, I think I said earlier, we tried really hard to build ourselves in a way that, again, if all of our volunteers are gone, one person can do it from the front by themselves. Don't have to, and it's a bit more challenging. And praise the Lord, we've grown teams, so we have a live stream team and an audio team and a this, right? But if need be, we can. And if God says tomorrow, stop doing it, put it down, we're not so tied to it that we won't put it down. 100%. I often talk about holding things lightly. Let me just grab. So my glasses, I often talk about holding things, and we're told to hold things loosely. But if we're holding things loosely, palm up, even if I let go, it doesn't matter how loose I'm still holding it. But if we hold things loosely, palm down, that actually I might be, if I need to let go, I can let go and it drops, and I can actually let go of it. And I think that's something that we need to do with all of this stuff, with all of our tech, with all of our comms, with all of our things. There might be a brand new idea that comes up tomorrow, which revolutionizes everything. And we go, great, but let's hold it loosely, because it might not be the best. AI is the hot topic at the moment, right? And everyone's like, oh, is it good? Is it bad? Is Chat GPT of the devil? What about Claude? What about all this other? There will be some parts of it that I think are beneficial. I've got friends and colleagues who are dyslexic, who struggle to write an email that doesn't have spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. So actually running that through an AI processor to say, hey, help me make this sound professional and blah, 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 is really good. But there are also some terrible things where you're seeing on social media clips of, pastors and vicars reading their Chat GPT sermons that they have written word for word. So much so that they're even reading the prompt at the bottom of it, going, I mean, it's bad. There's some bad stuff out there. So all of these things are not to be abused. They're not to replace our time with God, or our time in prayer, or our time in preparation. They're all to hopefully be used so that we can reach the one. Again, it's that missional, going out and reaching out to the ends of the earth, doing it for that reason. And I think our heart is a big part of it. I'm going to get preachy, so I'll stop. This is why I'm not a comms guy. I'm more of a pastor. I'm going to go into the woohoo Jesus, but yeah. But that's kind of a big answer in terms of how you start some of it. Perhaps too big. Come join me, or join someone. Come join me on the huddle. We'll go from there.
That was brilliant. Thank you. And what I really loved about those examples that you gave as well is we're not trying to capture an idea that you're creating content specifically for online. You are capturing what's happening at church, snippets of the sermon, the notices that are going on, and you're using the content there to broadcast that to a wider audience, to encourage more people that to see and understand that this is what's going on within church, this is what's going on within this particular context.
Yeah.
And it's capturing that, isn't it? And broadcasting
Absolutely.
that out
and
more
and it
widely.
doesn't and it doesn't have to be crazy complicated. So I mean, one of the things that I started I mean, I've always been a stickler for starting church on time. I used to be part of a church in past that, a 10:30 start meant maybe 10:40, and I was like, no, like, but then everybody wants to leave bang on time, right? Like I always struggled with that. So our church service, we have two, we have a 9:30 and then we have a 10:45, and they always start like bang on time. We will never, but one of the things that we started doing to enable that and to ensure that was we started doing a 2-minute countdown. And when I first started the 2-minute countdown, it was literally just a moving background and then 2-minute timer. That was it. With a nice little track in the background, whatever it was. We have since developed it into capturing aspects of church life. And so the 2-minute countdown now has loads of 2 to 4 second snippets of things happening. So baptisms, men's events, women's events, fellowship meals, some of the church services, worship here, worship that. If you were to just watch the 2-minute countdown, you would figure out a bit of who we are as a church. You would figure out a bit of what it looks like, what it means to be. We have baptism, so someone's being dunked fully. We run a little cafe in our church on a Monday, and I don't run the 2-minute countdown, but I run the 2-minute video without the countdown on a regular, like on a loop with our different church announcements and stuff. And it's amazing the amount of people that have come up to me and said, I just saw someone like pushed into like a bathtub. Where is that in the church? Like, I was like, oh, you stood right over it. What? You mean underneath? I said, yeah, lift these floorboards and we have this like giant bath that we baptize people in. It just gives it an inkling. It's just church life. And with that, we had a men's event a couple of weeks ago, which was, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, an awesome event. We had a fire pit Friday with axe throwing. I mean, just generally one of the highlights of the season so far for me was to sit by a fire, enjoying good conversation with guys, and then standing up to throw a flipping axe at them. I mean, it was just awesome. It was amazing. Anyway, but we captured, so apart from capturing stuff that we could put on social media, and you might create a little reel of guys hanging out or whatever, a few of those snippets of just 2 to 4 seconds will go up, and then it'll start conversations. They'll be like, they do axe throwing at this church? What are they, Vikings? What's going, but it just starts conversation, and it's nothing. You're not going out of your way to make something really, really complicated. You're just capturing a bit of church life to share who you are, to welcome people into your church family, to journey with what you're doing. You're just doing it in a digital way. Where back in the day you would have gone door to door knocking to offer prayer and that kind of stuff. Where back in the day you would have flyered and leafleted every single household to come in. Most people see a flyer come through the door and will put it in the bin. Like, that's sad reality, but it's true. But most are going to be online, and they might scroll past you, and if they do, then okay, but they might not. They might just stop and go, man, that's different. Why are they're throwing axes, they're by a fire pit, did they just drown that young person? No, the young person came back up. Okay. What's going on? And it brings questions, which ultimately will be I want to find out more, or they're too weird, I don't want to find out anything. But if nothing else, they know who we are, and can go and can kind of make their own decisions from there.
I think that's a really, really good place for us to kind of finish up there. Really, that's it's been really, really helpful. Thank you, Adrian, for unpacking all of that, sharing your thoughts on those things, and
hopefully I haven't caused more confusion for anybody. But no, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and yeah, I love talking about it. But like I said, we're just a random passage trying to make sense of what we've got using what we can. So always happy to talk about it.
It's great. It's great. And it's so encouraging, isn't it, that there are things out there that churches can access for free, that there's resources and opportunities, and equally, people out there that have been thinking through these things, and and check out the Fresh Stream Huddle with Adrian if this is something that's that you'd want to talk to him a bit more about.
Would love to. And there are other places out there as well. Check out Brady Shearer Church, Pro Church, with all sorts of, there's lots of information out there. By no means do I think I'm an expert. As I often say, I'm making it up as I go along, but welcoming people to journey with me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
Bye.